Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today, I want to talk about having a job versus a career versus a calling. Now, you may already know what these three different things are, but I'm going to define them. And I also want to talk about how, over the last 40 some years, I've watched the proportion of people in each of these three categories change over time in the game industry. It's something I've seen people make comments sometimes going, well, it's just a job. You're getting taken advantage of at your job. And I want to just point out that some people don't just view this as a job. And it's not a small number of people. So I just kind of want to go in and talk about this. Let's talk about what I mean by these three things. So, what do I mean by people who view it as a job? These are people who are basically doing tasks, usually assigned to them. In rare cases, they're the ones doing the assignment, but that's their job. And they get paid for it. And outside of being at work, they don't think about it. It doesn't occur to them. It doesn't define them. They don't go up to people and go, hey, I'm a game developer. It's just something they do to get paid in order to support all the things that they want to do when they're not at work. So that is what a job is. That is what people who view this work as a job. Then you have people who view it as a career. These are like the job people. They have tasks that they do or that they assign out or whatever their job is to do. And they, of course, want to get paid. But they're thinking of a bigger picture here. They often think about how these tasks fit in to the whole thing of what you're trying to do, the whole product, the game, or a line of games, or the genre of the game you're making. They basically are thinking, I'm doing these things, but how can I do them better? And how can the game be better? And also, what am I going to be doing in 5 years? What am I doing in 10 years, in 20 years? What do I want my role to be? What do I have to do to get that role? Because it's not just sitting around hoping someone points at you and goes, okay, it's time for you to be a senior. It's time for you to be a lead. You sometimes have to do things to show that you can do those roles. And I think a big difference, those are pretty big differences, but a big difference between a career person and a job person is the career person thinks about those things outside of work. They're thinking of, how do I get ahead? Is there anything I can do? Maybe when I'm not at work, that may help me the next time I'm up for promotion. Hey, look at the skill I learned. Hey, look at this class I took. Hey, I've been thinking about, wanting to manage a group. So I've done these things. I read this book. I've took this class or whatever. I would like to be a manager. In a sense, those people work to get better at what it is they do. And then finally, there's the third one, a calling. A calling is a lot like a career, but the difference is, they do everything the career person does, but the difference is it's really part of their identity. They think of themselves as this thing. Like, you think of yourself as a game developer. Like, I'm a game developer. It's what I do. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. You've always thought about those things, and you always will. When you're at work, when you're at home, while you're driving, while you're walking your dog, you're thinking about games and game design and code and game development. That's just what you do. And you do it because you love it. You work because you love the work. Yes, just like the career person and just like the job person, you want to get paid and you want it to be fair. That isn't the point. The point of this is, when it's a calling, you find that you absolutely love what you do. You get like an emotional fulfillment out of what you're doing. And the reason I want to talk about this is all three of these types have been in game dev for as long as I can remember. So going back to 1981, I remember seeing all three of these types in game dev. I think they always have been there and they always will be there. However, things have changed. The proportions have changed. And that's what I want to talk about. So 30 or 40 years ago, there was a huge barrier to entry to the game industry. There weren't a lot of game jobs. It was hard to get game jobs because you had to learn a lot of stuff on your own. If you wanted to be hired as a programmer, you had to show that you knew how to do some things on a computer that a lot of computer programmers didn't know how to do. Do you know how to access the video card? Do you know how to optimize your software to get a good frame rate? This is something that someone who's like, I'm a programmer and I'm making a front end UI for a point of sale machine, they're not thinking about that. So to get in the game industry 30 or 40 years ago, you really probably it had to be your calling. So a lot of the people that I saw back in the 80s, and probably even most of them in the early 90s, they were there for a calling. It was, they really wanted to do this. They made active decisions in their life to do this. But then the game industry started growing, and this started happening in the 90s. It grew, it became a lot more profitable, and it became more stable. And it wasn't unusual to hear about people working in the game industry. Suddenly, careers were possible. You could go, hey, I'm going to work in the game industry, and this is the role I want to do. Where in the 80s, it was like you probably did a lot of different roles. In the 90s, it started to be, no, this is an artist, this is a designer, this is a programmer, this is a producer. It was a new way to think about game development, and more people started showing up for that. They're like, oh, I want to get hired as a producer. I want to get hired as QA. They weren't thinking of it as, I just want to get in the game business. I just want to be in the game industry. They knew what they wanted to do when they got in the game industry. Books started getting published. You could go to bookstores and find how to code this particular thing, how to design a game. Schools started teaching it. It started as classes in game design, and then degrees started being offered. So now, that was in the 90s. So starting probably in the 10s, the 2010s, and up to now projects are huge. Millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. We're approaching $1 billion of dollars spent on a single project. And there are huge companies. And there is job insecurity, because if these $100 million games don't sell well, that's a huge loss. It's not like you're going to make that up in your next game. So because of that loss of job security, the career people some of them started turning into job people. This is just my job. Once you get laid off a few times, you stop thinking of it as, well, where do I want to be at this company in 5 or 10 years? You don't even know if you'll be at this company in 5 or 10 years, and whether it will even be up to you. So people started slipping from career people to job people. And I've been watching all this happen. Now, as things went from calling to career to job, do I think this is good or bad? I think you already know, if you've watched my channel, my answer to this is, well, that's subjective. Each of these people, jobs, careers, calling, they feel justified in being the type they are. The job people are like, companies don't care about you. Your job isn't secure. I'm here for the paycheck. I'll do my work. I'm here for the paycheck. And then the career people are like, well, I want to think about myself, but I'm thinking about my career and what I'll be doing. It may not be at this company, but I want to know where I'm going to be in 10 or 20 years. And then you have the calling people who are like, I understand all that's important, but I have to make a game. I've got this thing weighing on me and I've got to make it. And those are all very different things. Now, another thing about the game industry is, as games got bigger and bigger, and I'm not just talking budget, although it was because of budget, as more and more people worked on it, we're talking suddenly there are 50 and then 100 and then 200 and then 1,000. When you have that many people working on a game, by necessity, some of those people are just going to be jobs people. Not everyone can steer the ship, and not everybody should. I've talked about how committee designed games are not good games. So by necessity, if you have hundreds or 1,000 people working on one game, some of them are just going to be doing tasks. You pay them, they do these tasks, they get done. Because if everyone tries to have a say, if everyone tries to make changes, it would be absolute chaos. Sure, you can mention to a senior or your lead, I don't think this is going to work. I'm concerned about this, and it can go up the chain. I'm not saying that can't happen. But if everybody wants to be the one making the final decision, that's just not going to happen. If everyone wants to have a huge input into what's going to happen, well, you can't. You can't have the majority input in what's going to happen when there's hundreds of you. So a lot of people, just because of that environment, moved into being jobs people. A lot of these people were the career people. A career is hard to have and plan for when your job isn't secure, when there's a lot of layoffs, when you're not sure if this company is even going to be around in 10 years. How do you make a 10-year career plan? That's really hard. So what I see happening now in the industry is a lot of experience is being lost because career people are seeking out other industries. They're like, well, I'm a good producer. I'm good at managing people. I'm going to move to another entertainment field or even a non-entertainment field altogether because my management skills will transfer. I see programmers going, I'm a really good programmer. I don't really feel like I'm paid or people care about me or think that I'm even important here. I'm going to go to a non-game dev programming job and I'll get paid more and it'll probably be more stable. So I see that happening and I see experience being lost. But here's the crux of me being old guy. This has always happened. I've been seeing this happen for 43 years. And I see people go, but it's terrible now. It was terrible then. When the console market collapsed in the 80s, a lot of people, not by choice, left the industry. A lot of layoffs are happening now, and I see a lot of people not by choice leaving the industry. This has always happened. It's never a good thing. We're losing really good people with really good experience. I'm just trying to tell you, this will always happen. So I don't really want this to affect your decision on whether you're a job person or a career person or a calling person. You got to listen to yourself for that. Personally, I miss the old days where I was mostly surrounded by people who were game developers by calling. It made the development feel different. Now, keep in mind that a lot of this is nostalgia talking. Maybe it felt different because the team was smaller and I knew everybody on it really well. And we talked about things like, hey, I'm working on this design today. What do you think? Or, hey, I'm implementing this thing. Can I get your feedback on it? That's easy when there's 15 people on the game or 30 people on the game. It gets harder when there's 100 and it gets almost impossible when there's 1,000. So I'm not going to say it was better or worse, but it was very different. And I wanted to bring this up on this channel so you guys could think of this as a lens. It's a lens I'm using. It's a lens you can use to watch what's happening in the game industry right now. Something that's happened before, it's happening now, it's going to happen again. It'll let you get a perspective on this that you might not currently have. And just to be clear, this isn't the only lens you can have. There's a lot of different ways of looking at this. It's not the only one, but I think it's an interesting one. So I'm offering it up here as a way for you to look at the game industry through the perspective of people do it as a job, people do it as a career, and people do it as a calling. So I hope that helps.